Welcome back to Wagon Garage. Now, I have some exciting news today because I have an engine and it's just sitting in my Touareg. But unfortunately, I can't take it out right now because I need a special bracket to put on an engine stand. So I don't have that and I can't take it out. So today, we're just going to be spending a bit doing some other things, still getting this car prepped. Now, one of those things is the fuel tank. The fuel tank is been sitting here. The car actually was sitting in a lot for 5 years under rain conditions, and all the fuel that was in there was taken out already, but then dried up the rest of what was there. So it's kind of carbonated inside and just kind of grimy. It's not very good. So I need to take the fuel tank down. That way it can eventually actually put in a better fuel cell, because this one is old and decrepit. So we're gonna get to doing that today. Now, one of the first few things is that we need to actually take off this cover here. Now, the interior has already been stripped, and now, fortunately, I've had good connections with giving me this car, giving me some of the parts, helping me out with some of the connections. And one of the things that actually has been provided me, which has also been helpful, is I was provided a USB with technical 944 manuals, some of them for 1987 models, some for earlier models. And there's actually a section in there that talks about taking down the fuel tank. So fortunately, I have that information. Now, even though I've already done some partial tinkering and taking out some of these bolts and nuts and removing some of the hardware from underneath, disconnecting the fuel filter and the fuel pump, there's a couple of things I've already done already. The other thing is it's just essentially pulling it down, and that's going to be the bitch part. But I am partially there, so we're only going to get started. Now, to get started, I'm actually going to show you guys the entire inside. That is grody, and it even smells. That's pretty rank. That's pretty old. 1984. What this is from. Set that there. Okay, now I'm going to actually show you guys what it looks like on the inside of this tank. So that's pretty gross. Old, crusty. I see just nothing but rust and grime in there. Yeah, this tank is just in pretty much bad shape overall. Yeah, I honestly don't want to use this tank if it's going to look like this. So, all right, with that looking like that, I'm just go ahead and put this back in there. Now, before I can take this fuel tank down, I actually need to take this fuel pump out of the way. Essentially because it is along that gap where the trim of this fuel tank is going. So if you can't see that, there's a flat part of this trim of the fuel tank that's right here, and it's going to catch along the edge of where this fuel pump is. So I need to drop this, actually take this out of the way, remove that screw, slide this out, and I should be able to free up this fuel tank. Woo! Yeah. Well, that's crude. Grody, rusted, carboned, just, and that's just looking at one side of this. I can't even view like okay, so yeah, yeah, that's atrocious. I just might just play it safe. Now, while I have the fuel tank out, I do want to point out a couple of things that are wrong with this tank before I even decide to reuse this tank or just get something new. There is a gash here. You can clearly see some of the rusting from the inside of the tank, or at least just rust of the surface. And then there was, at some point of its lifetime, taped up again because there is another gash opening that is rusting through. So 3 things alone, with, I've already shown what it looks like on the inside, 3 things alone on how just in poor shape this tank is. So unfortunately going to have to go with getting an upgraded fuel tank. Now, the other thing too is these lines are old rubber lines, and for modern fuel, it can handle that, but for anything greater than your regular gas station pump, such as, you know, maybe E85, 100 octane, 103, all those, we're going to have to get some lines that will handle those octanes. And these being 40 years old will not do. Now, I do want to bring up something because I did find that I actually had some modern fuel lines. This is just your everyday from AutoZone fuel lines. And even though this is some old stuff and already cut, you can see that this is cabled. This is a modern rubber. And even though this is not covered in any sort of thread, it still has some rigid cable on the inside of that rubber. Your difference here, there's not much, there's not any cabling to keep its rigidity. It's softer, and for this stuff, it's just covered in a threading around it. So there's the example of differences of why, you know, something like this is going to be a little bit better. This is a little bit harder for me to squeeze upon. Now that I've taken out the fuel tank, the other part of it is going to be the rest of the fuel lines. Unfortunately, because of its age, it's just going to have to be taken all out. And you saw the inside of that fuel tank, so that means not only this fuel line, this fuel pump, the filter up here, all of it's just going to have to be taken out, replaced, and even the hard lines. And I think eventually, I think I just might as well go ahead and take out the hard brake lines as well. But I'll get to that next or some other time. So this is going to be taken out, probably repositioned. The fuel filter as well. All of that's going to be repositioned. There's also some lines that go to the EVAC canister, which is located behind the fender well. So plenty of this, just the entire fuel system is going to be taken out. Now, fortunately, we don't have an engine and we can redo all of these lines and especially get some properly braided lines. So I'm gonna spend the time taking all of this out and you guys get to see me fiddle with all of it. Now, to note, with me removing these fuel lines, these clamps are holding up these lines all throughout. Now, the easiest thing about this is that you can pop these lines out, and then this clip will be able to rotate in position. So it's just going to be spending some time removing these clips to pull all the lines down. Now this is the entire fuel system of what was left in the car from the fuel tank that I've already talked about. All the fuel lines, the fuel filter, the fuel pump, and the only thing that's not part of this is just a small section of fuel lines that are caught up underneath the subframe that I'm going to get to once I drop the subframe. But all of this is part of it, all removed.
At this point, you guys can see that I was not going to spend the time showing you guys all the clips that I had to break in the time that I spent pulling the lines down. Some of them were pretty much of a hassle, and a lot of them had to be broken with my vice grips. Some of the lines actually went under the subframe, in between the chassis and the subframe, so I couldn't show you a whole lot. So instead, you get to see this montage of me actually taking off a fuel filler out. Enjoy!
Now what this means from here on out is I can simply focus on the engine, the transmission, and then by the time that I do put together a fuel system, it'll be a fuel cell or a proper fuel tank, and it will be with upgraded lines that meet today's SAE and ASTM standards, and actually change and do proper AN10 connections. That will be more modern connections, which are also better and quicker for any sort of changes that need to be made. You can do steel braided lines and aluminum hard lines. So all of that being taken out, it's really good. Feel better about having to take all of that out. Now I know what I need from the car. The only thing is I need some of the clips, or potentially maybe replace some of the clips. Now, if you can see this from here, the only other thing that I had was these clips that I took out. Much of them I destroyed with my vice grips. These clips were the 1, 2, and 3 parts of it that would hold 3 lines in. Now, what I might do is actually replace these or do something similar with a different clamp, holding them in place. I'll come up with that later, not important right now, but so I have, now my goal is to focus on the engine, the transmission, and then once all of that's together, then I can reroute all the lines once I have it all in. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking around and dealing with me, and sometimes poor audio because I don't always have the clip mic in. So but I thank you guys. If you like to see more of this content or follow along with the build, do like and subscribe. And I do appreciate you guys for sticking through and watching me mess some stuff up and destroy some things. So thank you guys. See you again on that next Wagen Garage video.